Chapter 11. All prisoners, collect your things together and stand by your door, barked the voice of the guard. Corrie stood up. She had been crouching, having a conversation with a visiting aunt. It was just after breakfast on June 12, 1944, and she had been a prisoner now for 3.5 months. Corrie scooped up the Bible Nolly had given her, placed it in her coat pocket, and stood by the door, her heart thumping wildly. What could it be? The other time she had left her cell, it had been alone, but this time the guard was yelling for the whole prison block to prepare to move. Had the Allied forces landed in Holland? Were they about to be freed? She stood eagerly by the door and waited for it to be unlocked, but nothing happened. Lunchtime came and went, and still the door stayed locked. No one brought the usual slice of bread for lunch, and Corrie's stomach began to churn. Churn means to feel shaken or stirred up. Was it just a mean trick the guards were playing on them, trying to make everyone think they were leaving while they sat in their common room laughing at the stupid prisoners? Corrie was beginning to wonder. Finally, at mid-afternoon, the door was unlocked and swung open. "Hurry up!" a guard Corrie had never seen before yelled into her cell. "Fall into line and march now!" Corrie stepped out into the corridor, eager to see the other human beings. The whole place was crowded with dirty, thin women. Even though Corrie didn't recognize any of them, she wanted to hug each one. They were fellow prisoners, and they were all living the same nightmare she was. Like streams joining a river, the women in the cells near Corrie's joined the throng of prisoners marching along the corridor. As they marched, one word was whispered up and down the line of prisoners: invasion. Corrie hoped it was true, and maybe she would be free soon. Before long, about 1,000 men and women prisoners were standing in the courtyard. Corrie craned her neck, looking for an auburn bun. Auburn means a reddish-brown color, belonging to Betsy. Before she could spot her sister, Corrie was herded onto a large bus. The windows had been painted over and all the seats removed. "Move up! Move up!" yelled a guard with his hand on his rifle to help get his point across. Corrie felt herself being squeezed from all sides. "More! More!" yelled the guard. "Do you think this is a sightseeing trip?" He laughed loudly at his own joke as he shoved the women closer together and waved for more to get on the bus. When the guard was finally satisfied that not another body could be packed in, the bus lurched forward. Lurched is an abrupt jerking movement. It swung dangerously around corners, and there was nothing to hold on to. But no one fell. Everyone was packed in too tightly. About 20 minutes later, the bus stopped and the door opened. Corrie was carried along from the bus by the crowd. "Fall back into lines!" another guard yelled outside the bus, and Corrie shuffled into position, daring to turn her head slightly as she did so. The prisoners were on a large paved area beside a railroad track. There were no trains in sight, and the sun was beginning to set. Corrie had nothing to eat since the meager breakfast prisoners were fed, and she felt weak and hungry. Meager means small in quantity. She hoped they would get some food to eat soon. "Stand still!" bellowed a guard as he slammed his rifle butt with all his might into the stomach of a woman. Corrie shut her eyes and prayed as the woman doubled over and collapsed. It was so hard to watch such needless cruelty. For more than an hour, bus after bus brought more human cargo. Like most of the other prisoners, Corrie studied each new group that arrived. She desperately wanted to catch a glimpse of Betsy, and then she finally saw an auburn bun. It had to be Betsy. As the woman in front of her shifted from one leg to another, Corrie caught a better view. Her heart leapt. It was Betsy! Corrie tried to keep an eye on Betsy as her head bobbed in and out of the lines of people. Eventually, Betsy joined a line of prisoners about 100 yards from where Corrie was standing. Corrie promised herself she would find a way to get to Betsy before the day was over. Corrie stood and waited, feeling the bodies of the other women near her. After 3.5 months on her own in a cell, it was wonderful to have other women so close. And when the guard was not patrolling nearby, Corrie looked up at the sky. Pink, puffy clouds slid across the horizon in the front of the setting sun. Corrie thought it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Finally, as the last rays of sunlight streaked through the clouds, she heard a noise. It got louder and louder until Corrie knew for sure it was a train. It hissed to a stop in front of the prisoners, spewing billows of smoke and steam in their faces. "Get on! Stay in your lines!" ordered the guard as he opened the first carriage. Quickly, the orderly line broke down. The women, each one eager to claim a seat rather than be left standing, surged forward. Corrie saw her chance. She had to resist the crowd and elbow her way to Betsy. She gritted her teeth and slipped into a space between two women. Like a swimmer fighting a strong current, Corrie struggled to avoid being swept into the train by the flow of prisoners. Just when Corrie didn't think she had enough strength to do it, Betsy bobbed back into view. She was only 3 or 4 people in front of her now. With a dive, Corrie parted the crowd and grabbed her sister's hands. Betsy turned to see who it was. "Corrie! Thank God it's you, Corrie!" She beamed as they were carried along and up into the train by the rest of the crowd. They were grateful that they were able to find a seat together. For several minutes, all the 2 sisters could do was put their heads on each other's shoulder and weep. It was such a relief to be together again. As they sat and wept and talked, time sped by. Occasionally, Corrie looked out the window into the darkness and wondered where they were heading. But it did not seem to matter so much now that she had her big sister with her. Eventually, the train came to a stop. Everyone now peered out the window, trying to work out where they were. "It looks like we're in the woods. I don't see a railway station. We were definitely going south. I saw the Delt Cathedral Tower." The comments flew throughout the train as everyone waited nervously to see what the Nazis had in store for them next. "Hurry! Hurry! Get out of the train!" a guard began yelling. Corrie helped Betsy to her feet, and once again they joined the sorry flow of women prisoners, not knowing where they were going. Once outside the train, they realized that they were indeed in the middle of a forest. Corrie breathed in the heady scent of pine that filled the air. Heady means heavy. It smelled better than her expensive perfume. Again, the prisoners were ordered to form rows. Then they were told to march. After walking for more than a mile, they emerged from the forest into a clearing. "Voot!" the woman to Corrie's right muttered. The word struck terror in Corrie, who had heard about this place from the prisoners in her first cell at Venigen. Voot was located in the south of Holland near Brabant. But it was not a Dutch prison. It was a German concentration camp, especially designed for prisoners the Nazis thought were the most dangerous to them. Corrie could feel the dread rising inside her as they marched through the barbed wire gates of the camp and into the first building. They were in a dining room with rows of long wooden tables. Corrie and Betsy found seats together, laid their heads side by side on a tabletop, and drifted off to sleep, exhausted from the trip. Despite the fact that she was in a notorious concentration camp, Corrie was happier at Voot than she had been at Venigen. There were other people around to talk to. She slept next to her sister, and together they held Bible studies in the evenings for the other women prisoners. Everyone was given a job to do, and even though they worked for 12 hours every day, it was far better to Corrie than sitting alone in a cell, with only ants for company. Corrie's job was at the Phillips factory, one of the clapboard prison barracks buildings where prisoners put together radios for German fighter planes. Corrie started out sorting glass rods into groups by size, but when Mr. Mormon, a kind trustee who was her supervisor, found out she was a watchmaker, he gave her a much more technical job to do. At lunchtime, the workers were given an hour off, and Corrie would use it to lie on the grass, soaking up the sun. That's where we stopped.